So if the early 1900s were when these neurons were discovered, certainly a lot has happened since then. And in that time between the early 1900s and now, there's some important events that actually happened in history that give us insight or gave us insight into how the nervous system works. One of the more surprising ones was actually warfare. So as most everybody knows, in warfare, people get shot and people often die, but many people get shot and they don't die. And in World War I, there were some changes in artillery, in bullets, that made for a situation where bullets would enter the body and brain at very discrete locations and would go out the other side of the body or brain and also make a very small hole at that exit location. And in doing so, produced a lot of naturally occurring lesions of the nervous system. Now you say, okay, well, how does that relate to neuroscience? Well, unlike previous years where a lot of the artillery would create these big sort of holes as the bullets would blow out of the brain or body. I know this is rather gruesome. When the holes were very discrete, they entered at one point and left at another point, they would take out or destroy very discrete bits of neural tissue of the nervous system. So people were coming back from war with holes in their brain and in other parts of their nervous system that were limited to very specific locations. In addition to that, there was some advancement in the cleaning of wounds that happened, so many more people were surviving. What this meant was that neurologists now had a collection of patients that would come back and they'd have holes in very specific locations of their brain, and they'd say things like, well, I can recognize faces, but I can't recognize who those faces belong to. I know it's a face, but I don't know who it belongs to. And after that person eventually died, the neurologist would figure out, I've had 10 patients that all told me that they couldn't recognize faces, and they all had these bullet holes that went through a particular region of the brain. And that's how we know a lot about how particular brain regions, like the hippocampus, work. In fact, some of the more amazing examples of this where people would come back and they, for instance, would speak in complete gibberish, whereas previously they could speak normally. And even though they were speaking in complete gibberish, they could understand language perfectly. That's how we know that speech and language are actually controlled by separate portions of the nervous system. And there are many examples like that.